Justin, it's on to you now.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad you're back with us here again today at the Global Hope Conference. As you're tracking along all day, you see how many different speakers we have. We have a wide range of topics. We have a wide range of help. We've had some great questions from people. This is really turning into a very interesting conference because of all the different topics we have, the different things that we can assist people with. So who I have today here is Darby Monroe. And she'll be giving her presentation on the roles of participant agencies in prevention and reducing conflict in schools and businesses. Now, this happens to be something that's very dear to me, and I'm going to be listening intently because I did run for school board, working with my local schools. I work with a lot of conflict management in businesses as well as with youth. So I'm really looking forward to this presentation, and hopefully I could pick up some little tips and hints that'll help me. So Darby, I'm glad to have you here with us today, and I'm gonna be quiet now and turn it over to you so that we can hear you. Go ahead, thank you.
All right, thank you. So my name is Darby, and I am a PhD student at Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale. And I recently did research with Dr. Duckworth there in the Broward County school system. And we were published in Conflict Resolution Quarterly. And the title of the article is Students Can Change a School, Understanding the Role of Youth Leadership in Building a School Culture of Peace. And this photo in the background, I can't show it like unblurred because I don't have permission to share student photos, but it's a picture of me doing a circle in one of the facilitated youth dialogues we held over the course of a year. And what we did is we worked with 9 different high schools and facilitated all these different youth dialogues and cultural centers and libraries around Broward County. And then at the end of the year, we had a big celebration at the Holocaust Center and had, you know, leaders from the community, cultural leaders and religious leaders. And it was just really interesting to see the student projects that they developed over the course of the year based on the unique needs to each school. So we weren't telling them you have to do this and follow this. We basically, you know, held circles with them and said, what do you see happening at your school? What would you like to change? And then they developed projects to address their particular needs. And then over the course of the year, they had the projects. And then at the end of the year, we celebrated what they all did. And of course, we collected data along the way just to see how it was happening. Are my slides going forward okay? I just want to make sure. So this was in 2017 and 2018, and the article was published in January of 2019, I believe. So the students were learning how to dialogue. They were learning how to do circles and be socially aware. And they really, really enjoyed the process so much that what our research showed is that student agency should be a part of like the regular standard curriculum for schools. Some of these programs already had peer mediation and restorative justice like as established programs in their schools, and some did not. So the students vocalized they really wanted these to be ongoing projects, part of the standard required curriculum. So it shows a need for peace education. It also shows a need for the collaboration, for the agency, for people to be able to address like what it is they're seeing in their environments that they're in. And I mean, our research was in schools, but it could apply towards businesses and organizations as well. So from the surveys at the end, I'm just going to show a few quick charts from the data that we collected that they think the research was important for everyone, and most of them strongly agreed. And they think that their projects would make this school a more inclusive, peaceful place, and the majority strongly agreed. And for some context, Broward County School District is one of the most diverse school districts in the entire nation. And right around the same time as when the Parkland shooting happened. So we were not working with that particular high school, but it also impacted the students. There's a lot of racial tension. There's a lot of religious discrimination. There's cliques, extremes. Where even there's like, what was interesting to me is like some of the students in like magnet schools, for example, if they were Black, they were either black or they were like white Black, and they're like, oh well, they call me white Black because I go to Starbucks and I'm in advanced classes. So it was so interesting to hear the different kinds of cultures and issues that people were facing. And of course, some of the schools were facing mental health issues, and they had mental health fairs. So the whole idea is to check in with people where they're at, and then give them grounds to come up with solutions on their own for their particular needs. One school did a screening of the movie Listen, which is about youth suicide. And when schools show this movie to their student body, it's important to have counselors available immediately after for students to talk to. They also had peer counselors and students trained in peer mediation available for the whole school year for people to talk to. They held circles and broke into groups for a long time after that to keep the conversation going. So pairing with community resources to make sure that mental health resources were available. One school, the students actually made teacher training because they felt the teachers were biased or racist and they needed to be more empathetic. One school had a Muslim youth team do teacher training, and they also had a religious fair. So each school had their own thing, and it was very unique, and it spoke to the culture and the needs of the school. And as we got into the data for what the research was showing, we did mixed methods. So there was both quantitative and qualitative. And some of the qualitative themes that emerged is students really, really need to be heard. They want to be able to use their voice. They want to know that they're going to be listened to and not just shut down, and that something is going to be done about it, instead of like, oh, I'm going to go to somebody with authority and then they might let me speak, but that'll be the end of it. Like, they really felt like because they had the agency to act on the issues, that they were heard and engaged. A nurturing and safe environment is essential for successful dialogues. So when we facilitated the dialogues as part of the research groups, we put down groundwork first, just like you would with restorative circles. What happens in the room stays in the room. Like mediation, you have to establish trust and norms. And whenever I do circles, like with my own students or people that I'm working with, we develop our own norms, but there's always guidelines to go by. So making sure people know those norms in advance, not forcing anyone to talk if they don't want to talk. With restorative justice, there's usually like a piece that people pass around, or If it's more informal, people could just raise their hands, making sure everybody gets a chance to speak. So not, and it goes back to being heard. Not everybody has had the chance to be heard. So this gives everybody a stance. And even in involving things for people that are shy or introverts or that don't want to speak out loud, we had sticky notes. Everybody could write something on a sticky note, and then they could put it up on a wall or put it in a box. That way it could be more private comment. But once the facilitator says, oh, this comment says, then people would feel more open to talking about it. So there's a lot of different ways to facilitate these kind of circles where people feel safe to talk about things and not singled out. This would be really helpful, I think, in a business or an organization environment where it's very hierarchical. Even in a classroom, anywhere there's a hierarchy, people may not feel safe to talk about their problems or their issues or their concerns, especially at, at the job. So having a way to safely bring those concerns to light for everyone to talk about is extremely important. And another theme that emerged was students view building diverse communities is really worthwhile. And like I said, Broward County is extremely diverse, and typically students stay within their groups, whether it's like within their religious group or whether it's within their race group. Things are very divided. And I think in school systems, at least, it's been that way for a really long time. So when the students were doing these projects, they got to interact with other kids they wouldn't normally interact with. They were able to find things in common with them, and build relationships and really branch out into their schools in ways that they wouldn't have done before. And I think, like, hearing their stories as they were talking in the groups that I facilitated were just amazing, hearing how they stepped outside of their comfort zones and made new relationships and reached out to people that needed help or that just needed connection, that they wouldn't have done previously. What that might look like in an organization is, people interacting with other departments or interacting with people on different levels of the hierarchy. Community and connection is important. So having regular circles can help build that. So the working theory out of the research is that peace education is really essential to development, as students, but also as people, and something that should be, standard and not just like an extracurricular, like a club or something that happens like an event or a pep rally. Like they want all the teachers to be trained in it and to be using it in their classrooms. They want it to be core classes that they should take because they experienced agency and how that impacted their individual school campuses. So when thinking about an organization or business, are there wellness programs in place? Do businesses practice restorative justice circles? Are there safe places for people to connect and communicate? Is it just like, oh, something happened, so we have to be reactive to it? Or can you incorporate things into your practices where it's like a culture of safety and communication instead of just being reactive to something that happens, which I think is really core to peace education and restorative justice in general. So from this, there are some implications and lessons. And when we give youth or people in general the chance to lead, to use their agency, it increases engagement, and it also makes things more impactful and sustainable. If there's a program and you're forcing people to do it and you're telling them what to do, you're not going to have a lot of buy-in. But if you involve the people in making a program, there's going to be more buy-in, more engagement, and a lot more intrinsic motivation, I think, from what I've found. When I had circles in my classrooms and the students got to pick what they were going to focus on, what they were going to learn, how they were going to do it, they were much more motivated to do the work, and they were much more productive than me saying, this is what we're doing. So I think that when you use like a power with model instead of a power over model, it really increases the engagement. So the second point on extracurriculars, that's like a club or an activity, not a regular, not like a regular class or program that all the students do. It's just like, oh, I'm a student and I'm interested in peer mediation, so I'll go join the club. But if all students were taught peer mediation, if it were integrated into the school culture, it would be like more widespread. And basically, if people look at, you know, programs is just like, oh, here's an extra thing you can do, it's not going to be included into part of the culture. And the goal is to make it part of the culture, if that makes sense. So making teams, like little cohorts or communities, can have a long-term engagement over time. I've seen that in my own work, both as a teacher and as a student in a graduate program. So small teams or cohorts could be established in businesses and organizations. And if students learn peace leadership and peace education, the skills they're getting, how to communicate and how to plan and organize and how to what am I thinking? Like the thing that's coming to mind right now is like all of these marches across the country, and a lot of them were organized and led by students, especially here in Florida, and they're making an impact. And I think that if a few teens can organize a march with thousands of people in it, you know, like that's an example of this. So it's core to not only peaceful movements and peace education, but they're learning how to use their agency. They're learning how to use skills that they could apply to their future, you know, relationships or their future work, and their future roles in businesses. So as we think about our schools or organizations, are we equipping the people that we work with the kind of skills that they can use in other places? Or are we just relegating them to, this is your role, you have to stay in your lane, you know? So it's important to think like, can the people we work with be the most powerful allies in advocating for change? If we give them a chance, if we listen to them, meet them where they're at, how can we work together to make a change in our own organizations that will impact, you know, our communities in the world? So specifically to the COVID crisis, I was thinking how this research could be applied, and if schools were to use a facilitated dialogue model They could send out surveys to students, parents, and staff saying, what would you feel comfortable with the next school year approaching in the fall? You know, do you want to keep it online or hybrid or back to full time? Like, really listen to especially students and parents and staff to see what they're comfortable with. I have a lot of teacher friends, and I also have a son in middle school, and I'm also an educator. So I feel like there needs to be a lot of communication around, especially COVID, when it comes to health and safety, and facilitated dialogues, even online discussions or online school board meetings, um, hearing from people and what they want and listening to their suggestions is a way that they could be practicing agency. In businesses and organizations, um, employers, employees, HR, and volunteers could all be using a similar kind of model. We have found that working from home is a viable option for a lot of businesses. Not every business, of course, but it does work. It has worked in education. Um, some schools are more effective at it than others, but it's okay. But if it's a job that you're doing on a computer, there's no reason why most people cannot do it from home. So listen to the employees, find out if there's ways that they can continue to work from home, if that would be more effective or safer than having them come into the office. The goal is to have safe, open communication for people to be able to talk and brainstorm and come up with solutions together. And then in communities, um, I know in Florida, at least, they're going on to phase 2 reopening, excuse me. But they're not really listening to their residents. They're just doing it. So it's important that, you know, community leaders and government listens to the residents, listens to the different communities, and finds out what organizations need to support the communities. Um, so again, is there agency, or is it just a top-down model where the people in charge are making all the decisions? Or are people really having that dialogue together? Are they being able to brainstorm and come up with solutions together? And this could be on a community by community basis. Of course, where I live is not the same as, say, Broward Dade, where they had a high number of cases. So our safety measures are different than theirs because there's not as many people. The infection rates aren't the same. That's why it's important to have these dialogues where you're at, meet people where you're at, and come up with solutions where you're at, because what's happening for the entire state is not the same in each individual community. So some examples of this in my own business, Trauma Informed Solutions. I'm starting, hopefully in the fall, a platform called Trauma Informed Pedagogy, where I will be having kind of circles for teachers and educators, which is just going to be an online space for people to be able to connect and brainstorm solutions for things that are happening in their classroom. And I see a lot of, you know, education models where principals are like, we're doing this program, you have to do it, or it's not really organized. So I'm trying to provide a space where it is organized and where people can be parts of these little cohorts together. I'm also launching something called Call Math, which I'm a math teacher by trade. Is like one of my things that I've been doing for a long time. And I like to come up with solutions, both as a math teacher and a mediator. So this is more about like growth mindset and tapping into like, why are you having that math anxiety, instead of kill and drill, you know, like making people do their times tables or algebra problems until they're blue in the face. So I keep saying it, but I think it's really important. Like, the first step in agency and all of this is meeting people where they're at, you know, like finding out where they are, what's important to them, what they're struggling with, and letting them be a part of the solution making process. I also volunteer with the online peer mediation platform who has worked with JAMS Network and I can't think of the other one, but I write article series and do webinars with them about peer mediation and circles in the classroom. And they do online peer mediation, which really helps facilitate mediations in schools between students and students or students and teachers, because that can be an issue. And they also do training to certify people to be able to lead peer mediations. So all of these things surround meeting people where they're at, equipping them to make decisions and act on their own. And that's, I think, really key to enabling people to use their own agency. So some things to think about as we move forward with COVID, and even with what's going on with the police and Black Lives Matter, is what correlations do you see between the youth leadership research that I talked about and the current COVID situation, and really any situation? And then how can you involve program participants, whether it's students or people in your organization or people in community, and to what you are currently doing? So I don't know if anybody wants to join in, but that's open for discussion now.
Good job, Darcy. Or Darby. Yeah, got your name wrong. Excellent presentation.
Thanks.
Very good, very insightful. I was really listening to it because dealing with kids is not like dealing with adults. Sometimes I think kids actually can repair a relationship a lot faster than an adult can for some reason. So, which has always been kind of interesting how that works. So one of the questions that that's came across here is when you're talking about your power with rather than your power above,
Mm-hmm.
can that be used in workplace mediations to where you're trying to resolve differences between, like, maybe a supervisor and an employee, or two employees or something? Is that a model that can be used in that situation?
I definitely think so, because say there's employees and they're having an issue with a supervisor or somebody that's at a higher level than them. Typically the way, at least from what I've seen in organizations, is employees are more expendable and the supervisors are not. So HR, or if there is, an ombudsman or a mediator on staff, like, they may be more biased and leaning towards the supervisor, which is unfortunate, because it's definitely a power over model. And most places don't have mediators or ombudsman or anybody like that to go to. And not all HR people have training in conflict resolution. So it's something to keep in mind. And I think that if people are dealing with some kind of workplace conflict, they do need to take into consideration the power dynamics, because even if they say they're not biased or it's not an issue, if it's an employee trying to come forward with an issue they're having, they might have a lot more fear or may not feel safe to bring up their concern because of past issues they've had with people in power. And there's almost a structural violence to it where not everybody has the same opportunities, you know? So if it's just an employee, they don't have the same rights, they don't have the same opportunities that a supervisor would have. And that's how the system is structured. So I think by changing the workplace culture to be more a power with model, I mean, of course, there can still be, you know, supervisors and bosses and everything. But if you look at corporations where they listen to the employees, it's usually a better work environment and people feel safer coming forward with concerns and their concerns are taken seriously. If it's a very power over model and somebody questions a supervisor, they might lose their job. You know?
Yeah, you have to be careful the way you respond to your boss, even if it isn't a mediation. You have to
Right.
a little humility. You can't just go in there and speak your mind completely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like you're describing a something I was taught when I was in business management, which was the difference between a leader and a boss.
Mm-hmm.
Leader's going to be on the same rope pulling with you, where the boss is going to be standing at the side telling you how to pull.
Yes.
It kind of seems like the model you're talking about, and that I believe it would be a very effective model. Now, if we can just get the people in power to listen to us, that would be great.
Exactly. Or put the people in power that are the right kind of people.
Well, I'm an advocate of somebody who believes that the boss needs to be down on the floor a little bit. The boss cannot be the one on the floor working every day, but I'm a firm believer that the boss needs to be down on the floor at least one day a month or something, doing what the employees are doing, so he understands what they're up against. And that's something I've had a lot of benefit with as a supervisor and as a manager. As I would go to a new place and they would say, even if it was, the bathrooms need cleaned, I would go do the first cleaning of every month. That way everybody saw that I was willing to go clean the bathroom, or I was willing to take out the trash, or I was willing to mop a floor. And that got a lot of respect because I was willing to do their job. And I think it went a long way with them to say, okay, I've done it. I know you can do it. So
Right.
that's just a management profile I have. So a lot of people don't look at it that way, but I believe you have to, if you've never been the janitor, how can you be the CEO?
Yeah, you reminded me of one of the core concepts of peace education, which, or at least I think is that instead of teachers being at the front of the classroom telling students what to learn and think and how to do it, teachers are co-creators of knowledge with their students, learning alongside of them. And I make tons of mistakes as a teacher and I acknowledge them. And sometimes I do it on purpose, but a lot of times I don't. And part of giving students agency is, the goal setting and the circles and all of that with them. But, I don't know everything and I don't have to know everything in order to teach them how to learn and learn alongside of them. So I think that can be used in any situation, whether it's within a family or a business, that we bounce things off each other. Like, I am not the ultimate authority, So
Always be willing to learn.
yes.
So, all right. Well, I think we've kind of come to the end of our time here, and that was very informative, and I really enjoyed listening to it. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chris, and he's going to finish us out here. So I look forward to hearing from you some more, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks.
Excellent
Chris?
job. I look forward to working with you again on Friday. And that was an amazing presentation. Like I said, you do my alumni proud, and excellent job. And I hope to see you in the next session.